Well, good morning. I'd like to thank everyone for coming here today as we talk about a very important issue for countless Canadians, and that is support for small businesses. Small businesses are the lifeblood of our communities, and they're the backbone of the Canadian economy. Unfortunately, the pandemic has had a massive impact on small businesses. 30% of small businesses are unsure of just how much longer they can stay open. The owners of these businesses have had to make heartbreaking decisions, including laying off loyal employees, usually their own friends, as well as exhausting their life savings. Yet in the midst of this crisis, while small businesses are facing a daily struggle for survival, some small businesses receiving the wage subsidy have had to face punishing audits by the CRA. When Conservatives heard of this, we knew something needed to be done to stop these audits. That's why 2 weeks ago we introduced an opposition motion to end the wage subsidy audits until at least June of 2021, which would put them following next year's tax season. The Liberals, who have previously accused small businesses of being tax dodgers and who have raised taxes through payroll deductions, an escalator tax on alcohol that affects restaurants and bars, and a carbon tax, voted against the motion. Conservatives worked with the other opposition parties to pass this motion in the House of Commons and stand up for small businesses across Canada. MPs from the Bloc Québécois, the NDP, the Green Party, and even 2 of the independents also voted with Conservatives to pass this motion. However, the Trudeau Liberals have given no indication that it will comply with the will of Parliament and end these punishing audits on small businesses. That's why I've written a letter to the Minister of National Revenue and asked her if she has instructed the CRA to listen to the democratically elected voice of Canadians and end these audits. I have yet to hear back from the Minister. So today we are here to publicly call on the Trudeau Liberals to acknowledge the motion that was passed by elected members of Parliament and end these punishing audits on small businesses. This is not just about doing the right thing to support small businesses and the millions of Canadians that rely on them, but it's also about respecting democracy and the elected voices of millions of Canadians. MP Philip Lawrence, the Shadow Minister for National Revenue, will now give some remarks on this issue.
Thank you, Pat. To start with, I would like to thank all those small business owners out there and all the employees of small businesses who've done so much for our communities and my community and communities throughout Canada. I'd also like to thank the Canadian Federation of Independent Business and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce all across this country who are advocating tirelessly for our small business owners. In September of this year, the CRA started auditing the wage subsidy for small businesses and other businesses alike. Almost immediately, our office got complaints and emails. And when we met with small business owners and found out the scope of these audits, we were very surprised. From the turnaround time to provide all of the information and supporting documents listed in the initial contact was not more than 10 days. And to add on this, many of these documents require professionals, which charge substantial fees. It is clear that these audits are unnecessarily burdensome. In some cases, actually, the fees actually outstrip the benefit from the wage subsidy. We all know that small businesses who applied for the wage subsidy are amongst the hardest hit in this community. The fact that the Liberal government would think that to audit these businesses in their time of need is outrageous. Governments of all levels should be taking steps to help our small businesses, help them continue, and to bridge to a better day. It has now been nearly 3 weeks since our motion passed in the House of Commons, and the Trudeau Liberals have yet to apologize to small business owners and to end these audits. This is shameful behavior by the Trudeau Liberals, who are violating the democratic will of Canadians. Canadian Conservatives will not relent. We will not back down. We will keep putting pressure on the Liberals until they stop disrespecting small business owners and end these punishing audits. It's time for the Liberals to change direction. Small businesses and countless Canadians who they employ are counting on the government to change direction. I would now like to call upon MP Bernard Genereux, who is a tireless advocate for small business owners. He will be delivering his remarks en français. Merci.
Bonjour tout le monde, bon matin. Merci de votre présence. Aujourd'hui, nous parlons d'une question très importante pour de nombreux Canadiens et nombreuses Canadiennes, le soutien aux petites entreprises. Les petites entreprises sont le moteur de nos communautés, le moteur de nos économies locales et le pilier principal de l'économie canadienne. Malheureusement, les propriétaires de ces entreprises ont dû prendre des décisions extrêmement difficiles, dont je suis par ailleurs, propriétaire moi-même d'une entreprise. Donc, nous avons eu, et les entreprises ont eu prendre des décisions très difficiles, comme par exemple de licencier des fidèles employés qui sont là depuis de nombreuses années, ou encore prendre des économies qu'ils avaient accumulées pendant des années pour être capables de passer au travers. Pourtant, en pleine crise, alors que les entreprises luttent tous les jours pour survivre, certaines d'entre celles qui ont touché la subvention salariale doivent subir un audit injuste de la part de l'Agence de revenus du Canada. Nous savons que les petites entreprises qui ont demandé la subvention salariale sont parmi les plus touchées au Canada. C'est pourquoi, il y a près de 3 semaines, j'ai présenté une motion de l'opposition pour mettre fin aux audits, ou en tout cas, assurément, les remettre jusqu'avant juin 2021, après la période de déclaration des revenus. Évidemment, les libéraux, qui ont déjà accusé les propriétaires de petites entreprises de fraudeurs fiscaux, ou qui ont augmenté les impôts au niveau des déclarations salariales, une taxe ascenseur sur l'alcool ou encore la taxe sur le carbone, ont voté contre. On voté contre cette motion. Ça fait maintenant 19 jours que la motion a été adoptée à la Chambre des communes et les libéraux de Justin Trudeau doivent toujours s'excuser auprès des petites entreprises et mettre fin à ces audits. Nous sommes donc ici aujourd'hui pour demander officiellement et publiquement aux libéraux de Justin Trudeau de reconnaître que la motion a été adoptée par les députés élus de la Chambre des communes et qu'ils doivent mettre fin aux audits injustes de ces petites entreprises. Les conservateurs que nous sommes de Aaron O'Toole n'arrêteront n'arrêteront pas non plus de défendre les petites entreprises. Nous allons mettre la pression sur les libéraux jusqu'à ce qu'ils recommencent à respecter les petites entreprises et écouter la volonté démocratique de la population canadienne. Il est temps que les libéraux changent de cap et fassent ce qui est juste, ce que veulent les entreprises canadiennes et de petites entreprises et de nombreux... C'est ce que veulent, les petites entreprises et les Canadiens et Canadiennes, ainsi que les personnes qu'elles emploient. Merci beaucoup à tous.
It's time for questions. So it's now time for questions. C'est maintenant le temps de prendre des questions, en commençant par les questions au téléphone. Comme à l'habitude, une question suivie par journaliste. Aujourd'hui, nous aurons assez de temps pour 6 questions, 3 au téléphone et 3 dans la salle. Operator, can we have the first question?
Thank you. Merci. Please press star 1 on your telephone keypad if you would like to ask a question. Veuillez appuyer sur étoile 1 pour poser une question. Our first question, notre première question, is from James Munson with Bloomberg Tax. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Hi there. Thanks very much. I'm just wondering, first of all, if you have a sense of the amount of funds that are in question here when it comes to the wage subsidy that was given. How much money is the government trying to recover through the audits that you are talking about as small business audits? Do you have a sense of that?
I don't have a sense of a dollar figure they're targeting. We simply contend that while small businesses are fighting for their very survival, where the day-to-day where 30% of small businesses are literally on the brink of closing their doors, that this is not the correct time to conduct these onerous audits.
Okay, thank you. And sure, go ahead. Sorry. Oh, yeah, and go ahead. Sorry, was there another part of that answer?
No, go ahead with your follow-up.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, sorry, this sounds a little iffy. And I guess I forget. There was a mention that fees, in some cases, the fees that folks are paying for accountants and I guess lawyers to file these audits are sometimes larger than the benefit received. I'm just wondering how that can be and what sort of amounts are we talking about here, just to give people a better sense of that kind of situation.
I'll let MP Lawrence answer that.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, sorry. Obviously, the wage subsidy and the amount can vary depending on the employees and the length of it. The reality is that the document that the CRA sent was asking for pages and pages of documents, and the procurement, preparation, and creation of those can cost and has cost thousands of dollars. That actually comes from a constituent directly to myself who had this experience. So that's how it can happen. The reality is because of the requests were so onerous, professional fees could be, like I said, in the thousands of dollars, which has in occasions outstripped the benefit of the wage subsidy, which is truly troubling.
Opératrice, prochaine question.
Thank you. Merci. Once again, please press star 1 if you would like to ask a question. Veuillez appuyer sur étoile 1 pour poser une question. We have no further questions on the phone at the moment.
We'll now take
Retourne la parole dans la salle.
We'll now take questions in the room. Ian?
Ian Wood, CTV News. When the CERB was being handed out, there were a lot of questions from your party about people receiving it who shouldn't be, maybe, and having the CRA double check that. So is it not prudent then for the CRA to make sure that people receiving or businesses receiving the wage subsidy should in fact be getting it and getting the amount that they are eligible for?
Thanks. So when we look at the questions of when we review the government's action, we want to audit the government's action. There's also making sure that the AG is appropriately holding the government to accountability for the eligibility of the CERB. When it comes to the small business, and that's what we're here to talk about today, is that there are the amount of documentation is onerous, and it's within 10 days they had to provide these tons and tons of documents. And we're not saying forever, we're saying let's pause it. Just so during the pandemic, of course, Ontario and Quebec and other places in this country are facing the second wave. So now is not the time to force business owners go out there, talk to their lawyer, accountants, come up with hundreds of documents in some cases at costs of thousands of dollars when they're just trying to keep the lights on.
So you're just saying let's put a pause on auditing.
Correct.
Right. So there should be no oversight until when exactly?
So our motion called until June of next year to delay those audits. So we're saying, you know what, Conservatives will always be there saying we want the right people to get the right money. That's absolutely true. But now is not the time to burden our small business owners. Just walk down Main Street. So I'm from a little town called Orono, Ontario. I was shooting a video, and I literally had 3 business owners come out of their shops running towards me to tell me about their challenges. That shouldn't be happening in Canada.
And just sorry, quickly, is this not a double standard, though, against individual benefits that were given out by the government, though? There was a lot of requests over the early days of CERB in the summer about making sure the CERB was being handed out correctly and then making sure it was, withdrawn if that person wasn't eligible, say. Thank you.
Thank you. We are deeply concerned about all benefit funds going to those that should receive them. That's why we called upon the Auditor General to audit the government and to determine how the government made its decisions about who was mailed checks. We are not asking the CRA to audit individual Canadians. We're asking the Auditor General to audit the government's role in determining where benefit checks went, and we are asking the government, calling upon the government. In fact, it's Parliament that's called upon the government. There's been a vote in Parliament on this. So Parliament is calling upon the government to postpone its audits of small businesses on the wage subsidy until after next year's tax season, June of 2021.
Chris Reynolds, Canadian Press. Finance Minister Freeland has pledged to table follow-up legislation to Bill C9, recently passed in the Senate, that would fill in a gap. This is the gap that still requires entrepreneurs to have paid their rent already for October and November if they want to qualify for rent relief. So follow-up legislation is to follow swiftly, Ms. Freeland says. I'm wondering if there are any other provisions, or even just one provision, you would want to tack on to such follow-up legislation.
Well, that's the rush to get this through Parliament without proper scrutiny, without review at the Finance Committee, has revealed shortcomings in Bill C9, and there's really no excuse for it. The government had all summer to come into September with draft legislation that is properly thought out to support small businesses, and they blew it. Look, today is November 23rd, and this is the first day that small businesses have been able to apply for the rent subsidy. Most didn't even qualify for the old subsidy, but even for those that did, that program expired in September, and December's rent is a little over a week away. So there may well, at the speed with which a very complicated bill was rushed through Parliament, there may well be other issues that arise from this, and it's disappointing that this is all seemingly being done on the fly when there was actually many months with which to prepare this bill.
Jurisdictions including York Region and Toronto are now going into a major lockdown mode that is having a lot of small businesses shut their doors while essential businesses stay open, and often big box stores are included among those essential businesses, but smaller, more specialized retailers are not. To what extent are you concerned about the welfare of those smaller entrepreneurs amid these restrictions?
I'm very concerned, and this goes to the failings of this government to table its aid measures in a timely manner, well thought out legislation that businesses could plan and anticipate in anticipation of potential further lockdowns. We had been calling upon the government for many months to demonstrate to the small business community that it has a plan to ensure the survival of this sector. And I mean, it goes to the entire pandemic response of this government, the absence of at-home and rapid testing, things that might be able to help us maintain an employment-based economy. So it's these are devastating moments for many small businesses, and that's why we're here today talking about it.
David?
David Thurton, CBC News. There's a lot of criticism about the lockdowns that Ontario is imposing on certain regions. I'm wondering if you could share your thoughts on that. It's being called as a blunt tool, and there are better ways to impose those restrictions and also to, help those small businesses in Ontario that, really depend on the next couple of weeks, of weeks, because of the holiday sales.
Yes.
I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it certainly is for months I've heard heartbreaking stories from small businesses, both in my own Calgary riding, but also from across Canada. And again, the slow response of tabling bills like Bill C9, the sloppy execution of these aid measures, the absence of the availability of at-home testing and wider spread rapid testing all play into these incredibly difficult choices that all levels of government have to make as they consider Canadian safety.
Mr. Kelly, you feel that Ontario was forced into that position because of what the federal government has been doing or what it hasn't been doing?
Well, we are in a second wave, and this government has not been able to build from the knowledge and what we gained from the first. And so the federal government does bear a great deal of responsibility for the catastrophe that small businesses are facing in every aspect, from their own the timing and execution of their aid measures and their overall pandemic approach.
And once again, I'll check if we have more questions on the phone. Operator?
Once again, please press star 1. De nouveau, veuillez appuyer sur étoile 1 pour poser une question. Our next question is from Christopher Nardi with the National Post. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Good morning, gentlemen, and I apologize if this question has been asked before. I got in a little bit late because of another Zoom meeting, as it is. But I'd like to circle back quickly to, obviously, the motion that was adopted on Oppo Day about calling on CRA to end these pilot project audits on related to the wage subsidy. Do you not think that it's possibly a dangerous precedent for Parliament to stop asking an arm's length institution, that is the CRA, what it should, or telling it what it should or should not audit? Is that not political, beginning to look like political interference in what is usually a very independent process?
No, I don't think that that it sets a precedent. I think that we are in unprecedented times. And Parliament's role is to hold government to account, and the democratic will of this Parliament was to call on the government to postpone its audit activity to help preserve our small business sector that is absolutely fighting for its life on a day-to-day basis.
And so, and ultimately, I would like to somewhat understand the situation, because you are calling on suspending audits on enterprises that may or may not have received the wage subsidy. But at the same time, just late last week, one of your MPs was asking for further auditing into how potentially ineligible Canadians would have received the CERB. So is there a difference? Why are we trying to stop businesses from being audited, but then at the same time seemingly uncomfortable with Canadians who may have received money that they weren't ineligible for, when there may be businesses who received wage subsidy that they're not eligible for?
Well, we believe in accountability for all programs, but what we are calling for on the 800,000, I guess is the figure that has been used on the CERB, is for the Auditor General to audit how the government operated and executed this program. We are not calling upon the CRA's auditors to go after 800,000 CERB recipients. We are calling upon the Auditor General to do the research and to help Parliament keep government accountable for the execution of its programs.
And the last question will also be on the phone. Operator, do we have a last question?
We have no further questions registered at this time.
This concludes the press conference. Ici met fin la conférence de presse. Merci.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for coming in the room. Appreciate it.